What's up, fellas? Today is a rough day to be a Nets fan. The Nets are coming off of back-to-back losses to the Cleveland Cavaliers, a team that, obviously the Nets should, presumably, win both games pretty handily. The Cavs actually look like a pretty decent basketball team, and the Nets have not looked very good in those two games, and now they play the Miami Heat today. But in today's video, we're going to be talking about some moves that the Nets could possibly make to make themselves better. Now, these aren't anything crazy dramatic. There are no Kyrie trades involved in this because, as we've talked about previously, I honestly think that if you trade Kyrie, he's going to retire. So I don't think that any team is going to trade for him, even if the Nets did start to entertain that possibility. But in this video, it's all about some smaller moves. How can they improve their wing depth, their shooting, their defense? How can they get a quality big man, given how limited their assets now are post-James Harden trade? That's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. But quickly, before we get started, if you're new here, what's up? My name's Tucker. I upload NBA content twice a day, every day on this channel. So if that's something you're looking for, this is a great place to be. Consider subscribing. You can also leave a like rating on the video as well if you're enjoying it. Helps get the video out to more people on YouTube and really doesn't take very long at all. And you can check me out at various socials. There's a link tree in the description below that has every single social media that I have in that link. With those things said, let's look at some Nets moves. So my first thought here is, of course, the 5 spot. How can the Nets get better defense, better rebounding out of the 5 spot than what DeAndre Jordan can provide? And also, the backup 5 spot is not great. Reggie Perry is playing right now, who's a two-way player. Nicholas Claxton is a second-year player that could be good, but has been hurt. They need some kind of upgrade at the 5 spot. And as I was looking around, I came back to this idea that I mentioned in that Kings video the other day, and that's the idea of trading for Richaun Holmes. Here's the deal, and then I'll explain it. Tyler Johnson, Landry Shamet to make the salaries work. Shamet is a young player that could provide some value, and 3 second-round picks in exchange for Richaun Holmes. Now, why would the Kings trade Richaun Holmes? Well, he's going to be an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season, and an offseason in which there's going to be a lot of cap space available. I honestly think that Richaun Holmes is like a $10 to $15 million a year player. I think someone is going to give that to him, given the fact that he is still relatively young, given his athleticism, and given the fact that he's had a couple really good seasons in Sacramento. And given the Kings situation, I'm not sure they're entirely excited about, paying Richaun Holmes that amount of money if they're not really going to be a good team, and they still have Marvin Bagley on the roster. So this serves multiple purposes. 1, they don't have to pay Holmes. 2, they get Landry Shamet, who has this year and next year still on his contract, and he can do something for them long-term, play some minutes, maybe develop. And the 3 second-round picks, Tyler Johnson's kind of irrelevant here. So they get value there while also opening up some minutes for Marvin Bagley to really, truly see what they have there, assuming he is a part of the long-term plan there in Sacramento. Meanwhile, for the Nets, of course, this is an upgrade at the 5 spot. I would argue that Richaun Holmes is a better 5 than even DeAndre Jordan, and I would argue for him to start over DJ. But regardless, even if he is a backup, it provides them better size, better defense, better rebounding than what they've had to this point post-James Harden trade. He's not a one-for-one replacement for Jarrett Allen, but he's still a nice player, and if they really want to, they can re-sign him after the season as well. In a typical scenario, if Richaun Holmes was on this contract that he's currently on for another 2 seasons, this trade makes no sense, and the Kings would continue to keep someone like Richaun Holmes, who has been productive and is still relatively young, and they would keep him. But since his contract is not long-term, he's an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year anyway, and given the circumstances the Kings are in, I would not be surprised for them to take a look at potentially moving Holmes, and that's where the Nets would step in. Next up now, we go back to the Houston Rockets. The Nets would be acquiring, in this scenario, PJ Tucker and Ben McLemore in exchange for Tyler Johnson, TLC, Bruce Brown, Landry Shamet, and those 3 second-round picks as well. Here's the mindset here. The Nets have guys that they can put out there. They have bodies they can put out there on the floor on the wing, but it's just about the effectiveness of those players and whether or not they're any good. And so the mindset here is you cash in a couple of guys that might not really be able to play for you for one that will when healthy in PJ Tucker, and Ben McLemore can make some shots as well. The reason McLemore is in this is because the only way the Nets can make the salaries work with PJ Tucker is by including 4 of these players at the bottom of the roster that make about $2 million. And so I kind of had to put Bruce Brown in this to make the numbers with Tucker work, but then they get Ben McLemore back in exchange. So they're at least not losing, 4 guys that could maybe play for this group at the back end of the rotation. Then, of course, you get the 3 second-round picks as well. Now, for Houston, assuming their season continues as they're, a slightly below 500 team the rest of the way, depending on how good Oladipo is, there's no reason for them to not explore options in terms of trading away other players on their roster that do have value, whether that be PJ Tucker or Eric Gordon or otherwise, especially considering that Tucker is probably going to be going somewhere else in the offseason as he is not particularly happy in Houston. and is an unrestricted free agent. He provides size, he provides toughness, a little bit of shooting, and of course the ability to play up a few positions if they need him to as well. Still leaves the 5 spot as an issue there in Brooklyn, but a wing defender can certainly help them here as well. So that's why I would advocate for a potential PJ Tucker trade there. And you can continue along this similar theme here for the Nets moving forward with a couple of players around the league where you put together some combination of those, 1.5 to $2 million contracts that they have at the bottom of the roster, plus the second round picks, in order to go and get someone that makes $5, $6, $7, $8 million a year. Players like Derrick Rose, things like that. You can keep going kind of around the league, even going to get someone like Mason Plumlee that makes $8 million a year. It's not difficult to find players like that. It's just depending on whether or not the team that's trading away those kinds of players sees value in what the Nets have to offer, which is very, very limited here. Now, as we move on to a bit of a different section here, and that is, what if DeAndre Jordan is possibly able to be traded here? Because I've been operating under the assumption to this point, and not only this trade machine video, but just in general, that DJ is not able to be traded here because of whatever agreement him and KD and Kyrie, had when he showed up to Brooklyn. And now, of course, James Harden is there as well. And it's been kind of assumed that DJ is not available, which sucks because, his $10 million that he makes could certainly help match a bigger salary that would really help this roster. Now, this next trade is assuming that not only DJ can be traded, but Spencer Dinwiddie can as well. I have looked and looked and looked. I am unsure of whether or not Dinwiddie would be able to be traded. Of course, he is hurt, but that $11.4 million salary that he holds for this season is pretty critical as it relates to trading for bigger salaries, assuming that is something that is able to be traded. I have looked and I've not been able to find the answer to that question, but let's just assume for a second that he is. Here's a possible trade. The Thunder are getting DJ, Dinwiddie, Tyler Johnson, Landry Shamet, and 4 second-round picks in exchange for Al Horford. The mindset here for Brooklyn is that they're getting someone in Horford that, yes, is old, but is a significant upgrade, in my opinion, to DeAndre Jordan in terms of the things that the Nets need. He can space it a little bit. He's a good passer. He's still a good positional defender, albeit not a great rim protector at this stage of his career. But all around, he is just a better player than DeAndre Jordan. And Dinwiddie is someone that obviously is not helping your team this season, could get healthy and be ready to go by next year. But right now, in an immediate sense, if you want to make a move, maybe you include him in this Horford trade, then you give up Shamet in the 4 seconds. For the Thunder, you get out of the Horford money a little bit quicker for a couple of reasons. One, Dinwiddie does have a player option for this offseason should he choose to turn it down and go into unrestricted free agency. It's unlikely he would do that coming off of an injury, but it is at least a possibility. Even if he does opt in, you still get out from $11.5 million of that Horford money a year earlier, and Dinwiddie is a player that could be a possible trade asset for Oklahoma City next year, assuming that he plays well. DJ's contract runs for the exact same length that Horford's does, but it's only $10 million a year, so it's significantly shorter, and you get Shamet, who could be something for them long-term, and 4 second-round picks. So you're basically turning, everything that you gave up in the Horford trade initially, right? Which is basically nothing. It's like, it's Danny Green and stuff, and then you're getting back a pick as well, and then you're flipping Horford for 4 more seconds and Landry Shamet and some possible salary filler down the road as well. And again, all that is assuming that DJ and Spencer Dinwiddie can be traded in this scenario. Now, as we get to the end here, there are some free agents you could possibly take a look at here if you really, really wanted to. A couple of guys that come to mind: Gerald Green, Ryan Hollis Jefferson, guys that both have experience playing for Brooklyn, Ersan Ilyasova, and Dwayne Dedmon. Those are not super inspiring names, but the Nets do have the ability to go out and get someone like that because of different exceptions they have available to them in free agency if they really did want to go and make a move. And of course, the buyout market will be something that will be continually taken a look at here for Brooklyn the rest of the way as guys possibly get bought out of their contracts. Brooklyn is going to be a team that players are certainly going to take a look at as possibly a situation to join. And again, you can keep kind of going around the circle here of other guys that make not too much money, guys like JaVale McGee that the Nets could potentially go and get, but I didn't want to harp on those too much over and over and over. Now, the last point here is, this is assuming, again, as I made the point in the beginning, that Kyrie is not going to be traded. I don't think Kyrie's going to be traded. I think that if he was for some reason, he would just retire. There's very limited value there for other teams, and as a result, it makes more sense for the Nets to just keep him, in my opinion. I don't think it's possible for them to do like a Kyrie for Ben Simmons trade or something along those lines. It seems like an impossibility, which is why we didn't really even explore that in this video. I've talked about that already in a previous video. As always, I'm interested to see what you guys have to say down in the comment section below in terms of your own ideas for possible trades that the Nets could make to improve this roster. The assets outside of Kyrie, KD, and Harden are, of course, limited, so it is a difficult proposition, but I'm interested to see what you guys have to say down in the comment section below, and if there are a couple of really, really good ones, maybe we'll make a part 2. Maybe we'll make a commenters edition of this type of video. But with all those things said, I thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, you can check out more content just like this from me on the box, at the boxes on screen, as well as just subbing to the channel, looking at the channel. I upload twice a day, every day. You can also leave a like rating on the video if you enjoyed it, and check me out at various socials that are in that link tree down in the description below, as I said. With all those things said, I hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.